Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Progress Texas Happy Hour. My name is Chris Mosier. I'm the Communications Director here at Progress Texas, and continuing our series of visits with candidates for office in the great state of Texas in the 2026 primary. But technically, the young man who we're talking to today he is technically in the primary, but he's running unopposed. His name is Tyler Smith. Texas Southern grad, presidential fellow under President Biden, staffer for Georgia Senator John Ossoff, and more. Tyler is not only a candidate for State House District 138, but he's the Democratic nominee because he is running unopposed. So welcome to the pod for the first time. Tyler Smith, how are you, man?
I'm doing well, Chris. Thank you for having me. I really am happy to be here.
Terrific. It's great to meet you. So I've studied up on you a bit. We talked before we started rolling. Early voting continues in the primary. You are about to head out to go vote yourself in just a couple of minutes. How excited are you to vote in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I'm extremely excited to vote. I mean, this is an election that just feels different. Texas Democrats to this day have already outvoted Republicans in the state. We're voting because everything's on the line, and I'm excited to cast my ballot, not just for myself, but for Democrats up and down the ballot.
Okay, now that's going to be a unique experience. There aren't that many people who have the opportunity to vote for themselves on a ballot. That's going to be kind of perhaps a little bit surreal, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, this is my first time casting myself in a general election or election like this. I voted for myself for student body and SGA, but never for an election like this. So very surreal.
Awesome. Well, as we get started, give us a little background on yourself, quick bio, and, ending with what led you to run for the Texas State House.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, my name is Tyler. I got started in real humble beginnings. I started at Texas Southern University, didn't know much about politics. I tell a story that I probably told 100 times now. When I first got involved, I went to an event on campus for Beto, and the event had a flyer that was a picture of him and a black man. And going to HBCU, my unique distinction was to think that the black man was Beto. But once I got the chance to meet Beto, it changed my entire perspective on politics. From there, I went to the bursar's office and changed my major from business marketing to political science. And from there, I've gotten involved in politics, working on that Senate campaign, as well as working on a number, like you said, working on the Biden-Harris campaign, and then taking my talents to D.C., where I had the opportunity to work for Senator John Ossoff, doing everything from carrying his back to helping prepare memos and briefing points for the confirmation hearing for Ketanji Brown Jackson. Things that were life-changing, but I knew that my work still involved and brought me back to Texas. So I came back here and became the regional director for government affairs at Everytown for Gun Safety, doing life-saving work, trying to end gun violence in a bipartisan fashion here in Texas. And that work is kind of what led me to running for office today. We look at the state house, there are a number of problems and a number of things that have gone wrong in the state of Texas. And the one thing that all of those things have in common is 30 years of Republican control in the state. And I'm running to flip a seat that hasn't been flipped in over 20 years. Democrats have a really good chance of flipping the seat here in Texas. In 2018, we lost the seat by 43 votes. 2020, we lost it by 2,000 votes. And this is the first time we've had a candidate that has raised money and has gotten out and talked to the community like I have. And I think we have a really good chance of flipping the seat.
So again, no primary opponent. You're the nominee. So you have the luxury of focusing now on the real fight, which is coming up in the fall in November. So let's talk about the district, State House District 138, Northwest Houston suburbs, basically. Lots of energy industry there. About a 41% Hispanic makeup of the population. That's the largest ethnic group in the district. Tell us about HD 138, your home, and what you're hearing from voters there that you're meeting as you're out on the campaign trail about what their priorities are in this race.
Yeah, I mean, I think voters in HD 138 are really excited about this upcoming election, and they're tired of everything that's happened in the state. One of the biggest things that I hear from HD 138 voters is public education. As we saw in the corner of this district in Cy-Fair, Democrats out there were really fed up with everything going from the book bans and a lot of the things that the Cy-Fair ISD board was doing. We're able to flip those seats out there in Cy-Fair, and we're planning to do the same thing here in HD 138. Another thing that I'm hearing is that we just don't have enough local control. The voucher fight is something else that's really big, and it's infecting everyone in this district, whether you go to a public school or a private school. We need more control over our district. Just this year, we saw a concrete plant being built right next to Audi International And that dust is flowing over into school districts, and the city has no control over that. And that's all impacted by the state and not giving local control over the things that we do here.
So you touched on this, but let's kind of go issue to issue a little bit here. Affordability, of course, is the key national issue this election cycle for a lot of different really great reasons. Tyler, what would you be able to do as a state House rep? What would be in your power to improve things related to the economy and prices, the cost of living, jobs, all that stuff? That seems to be what's important to most folks in this election. What would be within your power as a state rep to help in that way?
Yeah, I mean, the state has a lot of power to do a lot of great things for the state. The state is the holder of the purse, and there's a lot of funding. Just last year, we had a $32 billion budget surplus, and there's a lot of things that we can do. One of the things I really want to work on, if headed to the state legislature, is fixing our healthcare system. One of the things that many people don't realize is that a lack of healthcare can cause a number of different problems in the state.
Sure.
A lack of healthcare can lead to bankruptcy. It's actually the number one driver of bankruptcy in the country. And I want to make sure that we fix that. I understand that Democrats coming in, we won't be able to come in and expand healthcare overnight unless we flip the state house. But there are a number of other things that we can do, like making it easier to purchase drugs at a more affordable rate that helps people be able to afford the things that they need to live. We can also work to expand Medicaid and Medicare to vision and to dental, things that people have to pay out of pocket currently. There's a number of different tools that I want to use to work within this legislator to build on not just things that Democrats talk about, but things that everyday Texans care for.
So you touched briefly on Cy-Fair ISD, which of course has been very much a storied place where conservative power has clashed with more progressive power in kind of dramatic ways. Education is a huge issue in this district. Spring ISD, of course, is part of the picture too. What's the vibe that you're finding again out there on the trail talking to people about public ed and neighborhood schools? What message do you have for voters who are focused on education?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people at HD 138 are very nervous about what's going to happen to education in our state. Like we talked about, vouchers is going to come through, and we will see the impacts of those vouchers this year as those programs are starting to roll out. One of the things that impacts us much here in Spring Branch and the HD 138, we have a problem with our busing systems. We have students and families that have to walk their students sometimes miles just to get to school. That's
Mm.
something that the state can fix. And something that I definitely want to work on if headed to the legislator. But there's also a fear of schools having to close down and resources being stripped from districts. I think another thing that people don't really talk about a lot is that when you strip away schools, that's also an economic hub that you take away from that area. Schools having to close down means that families usually tend to move out of those neighborhoods, which hurts businesses and it hurts the local economy of the neighborhood. So people are really worried about public education. They're worried about what vouchers is going to do to our local schools. Here in Spring Branch, where I currently reside in the district, we have already seen a number of budget cuts on the north side of the district to schools, and people are really worried about how all of this is going to impact us. And that's something that we're talking about on the trail every day.
Very, very good. You mentioned earlier, and I want you to expand a little bit on it. You've been an active advocate in the gun safety space. And your website includes a note that you've seen success in convincing even Republicans to get on board to help protect kids in Texas. There's clearly a lot of work to do in that department in the Lone Star State. Tyler, tell us more about your personal efforts in this area and what your plans would be in the gun safety lane should you be elected.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a family of gun owners. I come from a family that respects the Second Amendment, but I also come from a family that believes kids should not be dying in schools. One of the most tragic situations in the state of Texas was the Uvalde shooting. Since working at Everytown, I've tried to strip emotion away from the job because it can be very emotional. But hearing the stories of the Uvalde families and all the pain that they went through is very emotional. And it was actually the first time I ever cried working at Everytown. I think that there's a lot that we can do in the state of Texas in a bipartisan fashion to fix this issue. One of the things that we can do is raise the age to purchase a weapon. When the Uvalde shooting happened, the legislator came and two Republicans voted to get the bill out of committee. If elected, that's something I want to work with the legislator to carry because as we saw that we did it in a bipartisan fashion. Another thing that we did just this legislative session, we were able to get funding for CVI, Community Violence Intervention funding. I think when we talk about gun violence in this country, the empty mind goes straight to mass shootings and school shootings. But what we also oftentimes forget is the everyday shootings that happen in our communities. We were able to secure over $2 million in state funding to help groups in local communities fight back against local crime and local gun violence. And that's something I want to expand on. That's something that we do at every town, and something that I've worked on in my job. I've been able to work to secure $50 million plus in the federal level. And I want to take that fight back to the state legislature in a bipartisan fashion, working with gun owners, non-gun owners, Republicans, Democrats, to kind of solve this issue that plagues our community.
So this seat has been in Republican hands since it was redrawn extra red back in 2002. As we're talking, we're still in the primary mode, as we mentioned, but you're already focused on your Republican opponent coming up in November. In all likelihood, that's very likely to be incumbent Republican House Rep Lacey Hall, who was first elected in 2020. She's been reelected twice by wider margins than she initially won by. She is an open opponent of public education, reproductive freedom, LGBTQ plus rights, on and on. Going beyond just strictly partisan stuff, what should HD 138 voters know about Lacey Hall in terms of how she's negatively impacted their lives personally? And also, why should they see fit as a result to flip this seat blue with you coming up in November?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about Lacey Ho, there's a lot to dig there. Like you mentioned, this seat has been ruby red for a while. And most people would say this is a David versus Goliath fight, trying to take out incumbent like Lacey Ho, who serves in leadership. But the good thing here is that as David, I have more than just a slingshot. I have a lot of rocks that Lacey Ho has essentially thrown herself. She has supported things like ivermectin, putting raw milk on the streets, things that just everyday Texans don't talk about. When we look at our district, we have a lot of things going wrong, from, like I said, public schools not getting enough funding and students having to walk miles and miles. And Lacey Ho isn't worried about HD 138. She's worried about Greg Abbott and how she can appease him and Donald Trump.
Right.
This legislative session, we saw her not talk much about House District 138, but a lot about RFK Jr. And I think that HD 138 is tired of culture wars. They want someone that's going to come in and represent the district wholly. I think that that's me. Like I said, I've done a number of great things in this district. I've done a number of great things in my short time in my career, from being an Obama fellow to working in a bipartisan fashion. I want to come in and find solutions that don't just work for Democrats, but that work for everyday Texans and that helps our district. And I think that Lacey Hull has forgotten that. And if we talk about this district, in 2018, we lost this district by 43 votes, like I said. 2 election cycles before that, the last time Dwayne Boack had a primary opponent, he won by 30 points. So I think that the tide is turning, and I think that we're in a great season for Democrats. And I think that we're just going to have to turn out a lot of people who tend not to turn out. And I think that I'm the candidate to do it.
Very good. And kind of dovetailing off of that, and speaking of the kind of MAGA crazy tendencies, if you look back historically, at least over the last couple of decades, the least crazy legislative sessions have been the ones where the margin between the Republicans and the Democrats was the most narrow. In other words, people like Lacey Hall are going to go off on weird RFK Jr., ivermectin, Donald Trump stuff when they don't have to think about whether or not they're going to be able to get reelected, when they think they've got it in the can. And I think that's been the situation. Tyler, talk about the idea that even if the Democrats are still in the minority, that bringing that margin closer, making that balance, a little bit closer together, can improve the degree of actual real business that body gets done, as opposed to all this theater that we see all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm someone that's a fan of competitive races. Exactly what happened last year in making districts on a congressional level less competitive, I think does not help anyone. I think you're correct when you say when districts were a lot tighter and Republicans and Democrats, for that matter, had to run tighter races, we had better governing. In 2019, that session after Democrats came through in a tidal wave and swept a lot of seats here in Texas, we saw one of the more moderate sessions. A lot of crazy stuff did still pass.
Sure.
But we saw the legislature come back to the middle and work together to actually support everyday Texans. And then we saw legislative sessions like last year, where Republicans came in and they passed some of the most craziest things, some of the things that they don't even believe in themselves,
Right.
but knew that their base required them to pass.
Right.
So I'm a big fan of pushing the legislator back to the middle. That way we can work together. Like I said earlier, this is not going to be an easy race. And it's not going to be an easy election cycle for Democrats. We have to come out and turn out and give people a reason to vote. But I believe if we can flip enough seats, it can help us in bringing the legislator back to the middle and working together to find common sense solutions.
Tell me a few folks, you've talked about working with Senator John Ossoff. You've talked about meeting Beto O'Rourke. Rattle off for me a few other political big names that you have admired and that you've learned things from. Maybe even some folks who are that you would like to be colleagues with in the state house. Who are some of the other folks that we would have heard of that are central to who you are as a political person?
Yeah, I'll give you a blast from the past, a current, and some futures. So, a blast from the past, one of my favorite two politicians, one happened to be LBJ. I think he was probably one of the most consequential presidents, one of the best presidents next to Barack Obama. I'm a little biased there. That's someone I truly look up to. Those are two of my favorite presidents. I think currently, when we look at the state legislator, we have a number of great Democrats doing a lot of great work, from Representative Ann Johnson to Armando Wally, who I worked with tremendously a lot in the legislative session, and a number of other great members, Ron Reynolds, who supported our campaign, Retta Bowers. I mean, then I look at the future. I think that this year we have a lot of young Democrats coming up, people like Christian Carranza down in San Antonio,
Sure.
And a number of other Democrats running for office, Otis, who plan to make change. I think I kind of fall all around the spectrum. I worked for Senator Ossoff, love the Warnocks of the world. But yeah, those are kind of some of my political heroes. We have a lot of great people in Texas. Our two Senate candidates are really great. Jasmine has been like a big sister to me since she got into office, and James is really dynamic in how he speaks. So we have a lot of great people in Texas that I look up to, but also across the country.
Let's just be completely honest and say there have been election cycles when the Democratic slate of candidates has just not been very exciting. And that's just been the case. But this year it is anything but, like you say. I'm getting a big smile on my face just to hearing you rattle off some of those names. These are all people that we deeply admire here at Progress Texas too. So it's fun to kind of run down the roster and realize how good we have it. And so that's a cool thing. As we start to wrap up here, Tyler, give me your elevator pitch. You've met an undecided and independent voter in Texas in your district. Why should they place a vote for Tyler Smith for the Texas House?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell anyone that Texas needs change. If you're upset with anything that has happened in the last 30 years, the one thing that we can point our finger to is Republican control in the state, whether that be Greg Abbott, whether it be Dan Patrick, whether it be Lacey Hull. These are people who have not had Texas' best interest in our hand. And I'm asking anyone who lives in House District 138 to get on the bridge with me. I know this race is not going to be easy, but nothing ever has been. If we look back to the Civil Rights era when John Lewis, Martin Luther King crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they didn't jump on that bridge because the fight would be easy. They jumped on the bridge because the fight was worth it. I think that this fight is worth fighting for. I'm asking anyone that lives in House District 138, if you believe in more health care for everyday Texans, public schools that work for the public, and a fair wage so everyone can put a roof over their head and food on the table, to vote for me and jump on the bridge with me in this fight.
Awesome. Tyler Smith is the Democratic nominee on the November ballot coming up this fall for Texas House District 138, Northwest Houston area. Tyler, it's been a pleasure to meet you, and stay safe out there and let us know what's going on as your adventures continue, would you?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Great talking to you.
Absolutely. You too. Progress Texas is an independent nonprofit rapid response media organization. While campaigns come and go, we're the permanent home for progressive media and action in the Lone Star State. Find out all about us and how you can support our work at progresstexas.org.